A young virgin saved a millionaire from an accident, and he married her out of gratitude, but on their wedding night, he fell deeply in love. Nathaniel Nate Sterling gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His jaw clenched as his Bluetooth earpiece crackled with the voice of his attorney. "They're threatening to pull out of the deal, Nate," the man said urgently. "They want reassurance that your company isn't at risk." Nate exhaled sharply, his patience wearing thin. "I don't need to reassure anyone. They either trust me or they don't. They're not like you. They don't trust anyone." Nate let out a bitter laugh. "Then they'll fit right in with the rest of the world." The call ended, leaving nothing but the sound of rain tapping against his windshield. He barely noticed the sharp curve ahead until it was too late. The tires skidded. The world spun. With a violent crash, the car slammed into the guardrail, metal screeching as it bent under the impact. The airbags exploded, knocking the breath from his lungs. Pain shot through his ribs as smoke filled the interior. Somewhere in the distance, a woman screamed. Lily Moore had just finished her shift at the small bookstore down the road when she heard it, the gut-wrenching sound of metal colliding with steel. Her heart leaped into her throat as she turned toward the highway, rain soaking through her thin jacket. A car, a sleek black Aston Martin, was crumpled against the guardrail, steam rising from the engine. Without thinking, she ran. By the time she reached the wreck, the scent of gasoline filled the air. The engine sputtered, threatening to ignite. A man was slumped against the driver's seat, blood trickling from a cut above his brow. Still breathing. "Sir," she gasped, pulling at the door handle. "You have to get out." The man, Nate, let out a low groan, his eyelids fluttering. Lily yanked harder, adrenaline surging through her veins. Finally, the door gave way. She reached for him, her fingers brushing against his expensive suit. Then, his eyes snapped open. "Get your hands off me," he rasped, weak but still unbelievably stubborn. Lily nearly laughed at the absurdity of it. "Are you kidding me? Your car is about to explode." "I don't need," he winced as he tried to move, "help." "Yes, you do," she shot back. "And you're getting it whether you like it or not." Ignoring his protest, she wrapped her arms under his and dragged him from the wreckage. Seconds later, boom, the car burst into flames behind them. Lily shielded Nate with her body as the heat surged past them. Her heart pounded, but they were safe. She turned to him, breathless. "You were saying?" Nate blinked up at her, dazed. For the first time in his life, he had no words. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and clean linen. Nate sat stiffly in his hospital bed, arms crossed over his chest. His ribs were bruised, his forehead stitched, but otherwise he was alive. Because of her. Lily Moore. The name had been burned into his mind ever since he woke up and found her sitting outside his hospital room, refusing the check his assistant had written for her. Most people would have jumped at the chance to take money from him, but her. She had simply handed the check back, shaking her head. "I don't want your money." No one had ever said that to him before. Nate didn't trust it. Everyone had a price, so what was hers? When he was discharged, he had his team dig into her life. Lily Moore. 22. Worked at a local bookstore. No criminal record, no debts. No secret inheritance waiting in the wings. She was ordinary. So why the hell couldn't he stop thinking about her? His frustration boiled over when his assistant, Mark, entered the room. "Sir, is there anything else you need?" Nate's jaw tightened. "Yes," he said slowly, thoughtfully. "I need to find Lily Moore." Lily was shelving books when she saw him. Standing in the middle of her store, completely out of place. Nathaniel Sterling. Billionaire, CEO. The man whose life she had saved. The man who now stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. She wiped her hands on her apron. "You're not exactly the bookstore type." Nate smirked, tilting his head. "And you're not exactly the kind of person who turns down free money." Lily rolled her eyes. "I didn't help you for a reward." "Exactly," he murmured, almost to himself. "Which is why I'm here." Lily frowned. "If this is another attempt to throw money at me, I want you to marry me." Silence. The words were so absurd that for a second, Lily thought she had misheard him. "I'm sorry, what?" Nate's expression remained unreadable. "I need a wife." Lily let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Oh, of course. Makes perfect sense." "I'm serious," he said, taking a step closer. "You saved my life. I owe you a debt. And where I come from, debts must be repaid." Lily stared at him, stunned. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." Nate exhaled. "Look, I don't do things halfway. If I just give you money, it doesn't feel like enough. So let me give you security, a house, a future, whatever you need. You think I need a rich husband to survive? She challenged. His gaze darkened. I think everyone needs protection. And whether you want to admit it or not, I can provide that for you. Lily's heart pounded. This man was impossible, arrogant, infuriating. But beneath all of that, there was something else in his eyes. Something raw. Something real. Just consider it, Nate murmured, his voice quieter now. I don't do gratitude well, Lily. But I do loyalty. And if you let me, I'll take care of you. She should have said no. She should have laughed and walked away. But instead, Lily whispered the only word she could. Care, why me? Nate held her gaze, his answer so quiet she almost didn't hear it. Because you didn't ask for anything. And for the first time in her life, Lily Moore wondered what would happen if she said yes. The wedding was extravagant, flawless, and utterly devoid of emotion. Lily stood at the altar, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her expression carefully neutral. The lace of her white gown felt heavy on her shoulders, but not as heavy as the weight of what she had just agreed to. Across from her, Nathaniel Sterling looked like he was born for this moment, suave, commanding, untouchable. But beneath that cool exterior, there was tension. This wasn't a wedding built on love, or even affection. It was a contract, a repayment of a debt that she hadn't even asked for. And the groom, he was irritated. Nate had expected her to try, to play the role of a devoted wife, to look at him with admiration, like every other woman in his life had. But Lily, she was different. She didn't simper, she didn't flirt, she didn't pretend to be in awe of him. She simply existed, quiet, steady, unaffected. And somehow, that unsettled him more than anything. By the time they exchanged vows, Nate was clenching his jaw so tightly it ached. When the officiant finally pronounced them husband and wife, he barely touched her. A polite kiss on the cheek, nothing more. The guests clapped. The cameras flashed. And yet, the space between them had never felt wider. The suite was vast, decorated in warm golds and deep blues, but despite its luxury, it felt suffocating. Lily stood near the window, looking out at the city lights, while Nate poured himself a drink at the bar. For the past 2 hours, they had barely spoken. Lily was used to silence, but this silence, this was different. It was charged, unpredictable. She heard him approach before she felt him. His presence was imposing, his energy dark and unreadable. Are you planning to stand there all night? Nate's voice was smooth, but there was something in his tone, something laced with frustration. Lily turned, meeting his gaze. I don't know what else you expect me to do. Nate took a slow sip of his whiskey, studying her. Most women in your position would at least make an effort. Lily raised an eyebrow. An effort. To please me. The words hung in the air, sharp and heavy. Lily's fingers curled at her sides. I'm not like most women. Nate smirked, stepping closer. That much is obvious. She should have felt threatened, should have felt something. But all she felt was exhaustion. She wasn't here to seduce him. She wasn't here to win him over. She was here because he had asked her to be. Because this was the price of saving his life. Lily exhaled. You don't have to pretend, Nate. His expression flickered. Pretend what? That this is a real marriage. Nate tilted his head. Is that what you think? Lily shrugged. Isn't it? For a moment he didn't answer. Then he took another step forward. His proximity made her heart skip a beat, but she held her ground. What if I wanted this to be real? He murmured. Lily swallowed. Do you? He didn't reply. Instead, he reached out, fingertips grazing her wrist. It was the first time he had truly touched her. And the moment his skin met hers, something inside her tensed. She took an instinctive step back. Nate noticed. His eyes darkened. Are you afraid of me? Lily shook her head quickly. No. He studied her, his smirk fading. Then why are you shaking? She bit her lip, looking away. I've never. The words stuck in her throat. But Nate understood before she could even finish. He stilled, something shifting in his expression. You've never been with anyone before. It wasn't a question. It was a realization. Lily's silence was all the confirmation he needed. For the first time that night, Nate Sterling was speechless. The next morning, Nate sat at the edge of the bed, running a hand through his hair. He hadn't slept. Not because Lily had refused to share the bed with him, he hadn't expected anything else. Not because their wedding night had ended in silence and tension. But because of what he had learned, Lily was untouched, unclaimed. She had lived 22 years without ever letting a man close enough to take what so many would have demanded from her. And yet, she had given herself to him in a different way. She had saved him. She had married him. And she had done it all without expecting anything in return. That shouldn't have mattered to him. But it did. It mattered too much. For years, Nate had assumed that all women wanted something from him. His money, his name, his power. But Lily had given without taking. And that terrified him. Because if he wasn't careful, he would want to give her everything in return. Lily had expected indifference. She had walked into this marriage knowing exactly what it was: a contract, a business arrangement, a repayment of a debt. What she hadn't expected was how complicated Nate would be. He was cold, yes, detached, sometimes even distant. But then there were moments, fleeting, unexpected moments, where he would slip. Like the time she cut her hand while chopping vegetables, and before she could even react, Nate was there, grabbing her wrist, inspecting the wound like it was something personal. Or the way he would pull her closer when they were in public, as if the very idea of her being too far from him unsettled him. Or the night she had fallen asleep on the couch, and when she woke up, she found herself tucked into bed, a blanket draped over her, and the faint scent of Nate lingering in the sheets. It didn't make sense. If he didn't care, why did he act like he did? If she meant nothing to him, why did she sometimes catch him staring at her like she was something he couldn't quite figure out? Lily hated how much she noticed these things. Because every time he was kind, every time he let his guard down, it made her hope. And hope was dangerous. Because hope could break her. The truth shattered her in the most unexpected way. It was a late afternoon, the sky outside painted in soft hues of pink and orange. Lily had been heading toward Nate's office, carrying a tray with a fresh cup of coffee, a habit she had fallen into, even though he had never asked her to. She had been about to knock, but then she heard it. A voice, Nate's voice. And what she heard stopped her cold. "She's different," Nate was saying. "She's the only one who hasn't asked me for anything." Lily froze. His assistant, Mark, sighed. "And what does that mean to you?" "It means," Nate said after a long pause, "that I owe her. She saved my life, Mark. This marriage was the only way I knew how to repay her." Lily's fingers tightened around the tray. Mark hesitated. "So what? That's all this is? A favor?" Nate exhaled. What else would it be? A sharp, unbearable pain lodged itself in Lily's chest. She had been so stupid. She had thought, for just a moment, that maybe Nate had started to care for her. But now, the truth was clear. He didn't love her. He never had. This marriage had never been about her. It had always been about him. His guilt. His sense of duty. And she? She had just been the fool who let herself believe otherwise. The coffee cup shattered against the floor. The noise was loud, too loud. And then, silence. Inside the office, Nate's voice stilled. A chair scraped against the floor. Footsteps approached the door. Lily couldn't stand to see his face. So she turned. And she ran. She didn't pack much. A suitcase, a few essentials. That was it. She didn't need his money. Didn't need his promises. And she sure as hell didn't need his gratitude. The sun had barely set when she stepped toward the front door, her fingers gripping the handle. She was leaving. For good. But before she could take another step, "Nathaniel?" The voice wasn't hers. It was his. She turned, and there he was, standing at the top of the staircase, looking at her like he already knew what she was about to do. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was quiet. "You're leaving." Lily swallowed hard. "Yes." He took a step forward. "Why?" She let out a short, bitter laugh. "Are you seriously asking me that?" Something flickered in his eyes, something she couldn't name. "Lily. Have you ever," she cut in, her voice shaking, "stopped to think about what I feel?" Nate's jaw tensed. Lily took a deep breath, willing herself to stay strong. "This whole time," she whispered, "I thought maybe there was something real between us." She met his gaze, willing him to see the pain in hers. "But I was wrong," she said softly, "because all I've ever been to you is an obligation." Nate's lips parted, but he didn't speak. He didn't deny it. And that silence was all the confirmation she needed. Lily turned, and she walked away, leaving behind a man who had no idea he had just lost the only thing that had ever truly mattered. The house felt different without her. Nate had never considered it home before, just another place to sleep, another extension of his success. But now, it felt empty. He sat in his office staring blankly at the glass of whiskey in his hand, but the burn of the liquor did nothing to drown out the silence that surrounded him. She was gone. She had walked away without looking back, and for the first time in his life, Nate understood what true loss felt like. Lily had been the one constant in the storm of his life. She had challenged him, stood up to him, looked at him not as a millionaire, but as a man. And he had ruined it. He had spent years convincing himself that love was nothing but a liability, that it made men weak. But Lily had never been his weakness. She had been his strength. And without her, he had nothing. For days he searched for her. He called, but her phone was disconnected. He sent his assistant to her apartment, only to find it vacant. She had vanished. And the more time passed, the more Nate realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about getting her back. This was about proving to her that she had never been just an obligation. So he did the only thing he could. He helped her, even from a distance. Lily had never taken his money, had never wanted his help. But that didn't mean he couldn't give it anyway. He paid off her mother's medical bills. He ensured that the bookstore she had worked at, the place she loved so much, wouldn't have to shut down. But he didn't sign his name. Because this time, he didn't want her to think this was a transaction. He did it because he loved her. And then, one night, after weeks of searching, he found her. A quiet coastal town, far from the chaos of his world. She had rented a small house near the beach, far removed from everything she had left behind. Nate stood in front of her door, his heart pounding in a way it never had before. For the first time, he was afraid. Not of losing a deal, not of failing in business, but of losing the only person who had ever truly mattered. With a deep breath, he knocked. And then, the door opened. And there she was, Lily. Beautiful, strong, and still looking at him like he was a stranger. She didn't speak at first. Didn't invite him in. She just stared, her green eyes guarded, unreadable. "You found me," she finally said. Nate swallowed. "Yeah." Silence stretched between them. Then, "Why are you here?" He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Because I was an idiot." Lily's lips pressed into a thin line. "And you came all this way just to tell me that?" "No." He took a step closer. "I came here to tell you that I love you." Lily's breath hitched. But she didn't speak. So he kept going. "I was wrong, Lily. About everything. I thought I was repaying a debt, but the truth is, I was just too much of a coward to admit how much I needed you." She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening on the doorknob. "I don't know if I can trust you," she whispered. His chest ached. "Then, let me prove it to you." Her eyes searched his, and for the first time he saw it. The cracks in her resolve. The part of her that still wanted to believe him. And in that moment, Nate realized that this wasn't just about winning her back. It was about earning her. And for the first time in his life, he was willing to do whatever it took. Lily stood in the doorway, her heart pounding. Nathaniel Sterling, the man who had once been nothing but a contract, a business deal, a cold-hearted billionaire, was standing before her, asking for something he had never asked anyone for before. A chance. She could feel the weight of his words pressing into her, pulling at the cracks in her carefully built walls. But could she trust him? She had spent weeks convincing herself that walking away had been the right choice, that she had left to protect her heart before it shattered completely. But now, looking at him, she realized it had already shattered the moment she left. Because she had loved him. And maybe she still did. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak. "You said you loved me." Nate nodded. "I did." She exhaled, gripping the doorframe. "Then answer me this, if I hadn't walked away, would you have ever told me?" A muscle in his jaw tightened, and for a second, she thought he might lie. But then, "Fine." "No," he admitted. His voice was hoarse, raw. "Because I was afraid." Lily's throat tightened. Nate took a step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "I thought if I ignored it, if I buried it deep enough, it would go away. That I could convince myself this was just an arrangement. That I didn't need you." His voice dropped lower. "But the moment you left, I realized I do." Lily's heart ached. She could walk away now. She could start over, build a life away from him, away from the pain of everything that had happened between them. But deep down, she already knew the truth. She didn't want to start over. She just wanted him. Nate could see the war in her eyes. He knew Lily. Knew how fiercely independent she was, how much he had built a life where she didn't have to rely on anyone. So he did something he had never done before. He let go of control. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," he said softly. "I'm here to prove to you that you were never just an obligation, never a mistake." Lily's lips parted, but she said nothing. So he continued, "I paid off your mother's medical bills." She blinked, startled. "You what?" "I made sure your bookstore didn't close," he admitted. "I did all of it, because I wanted to. Because I care. Not because I owed you." Her eyes filled with emotion. "You didn't tell me." "Because I didn't want it to be another deal," he murmured. "I just wanted you to be okay." Lily swallowed hard, her walls crumbling bit by bit. She had spent so much time believing that love wasn't enough. That trust was something that, once broken, could never be rebuilt. But looking into Nate's eyes now, she saw something she had never seen before. Not power. Not arrogance. Just a man who was willing to fight for her. Still, she wasn't going to make this easy. She straightened her shoulders. "Love isn't enough, Nate." His chest rose and fell. "I know. Trust takes time." His lips twitched. "Then I'll give you all the time you need." Something inside her cracked. And this time she didn't fight it. She stepped forward. And for the first time she let herself fall. A week later, Lily stood by the edge of the city, a small suitcase by her side. She heard footsteps behind her, felt the warmth of a presence she now knew too well. She turned. Nate stood there, watching her with something soft, unguarded, real in his eyes. "No contracts this time?" she teased. He smirked. "No contracts. No obligations?" His smirk faded, replaced by something far more serious. "Just love." Lily exhaled, her heart pounding. She reached for his hand, fingers brushing against his. And just like that, they walked away together. No longer bound by deals, by expectations, by gratitude. Just two hearts, choosing each other. Finally, for real. And so, what started as a marriage of gratitude turned into something neither of them expected. A love that was real, deep, and worth fighting for. Nathaniel Sterling had spent his life believing that emotions made men weak, that love was just another transaction. But with Lily, he learned that love isn't a debt to be repaid, it's a choice made with the heart. And Lily, she had walked into this marriage expecting nothing, but in the end, she found everything. Because sometimes the most beautiful love stories aren't the ones that start with passion or romance. They're the ones that begin with an accident, a sacrifice, and a choice. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories for more emotional, unforgettable tales. Because the most powerful stories aren't just the ones we read, they're the ones that stay with us forever.